But typically, the type of story that we're trying to help to share is a story that helps excite and bring people to take on their own risk, to be the entrepreneur. They maybe went through their PDC at some point.
I hear you.
And yeah, and so that's kind of just to give you an idea of the audience that we're playing to and the people that we're having on the podcast to share. That's what we're going for. And so what I would hope to create in this kind of conversation today is maybe what is I call it an epiphany bridge, if you've ever heard that term. An epiphany.
No, but I like it.
Yeah, so an epiphany bridge story that we could share with the audience that helps to bridge them from where they're at right now to actually taking action on something and getting it into that emotional state where they can actually have that gut feeling that they need to take it forward. And epiphanies are a great moment for that because it kind of brings logic with the emotion, and they can actually make a decision, because logic actually doesn't allow you to do anything. It just helps you to weigh two different options or weigh options, right? But when we get the emotional side of it, that's when we want to. So my question for you to help us start exploring this is, what would you like the audience from your story? What would you like them to take away from your story at this moment in time? Because it'll be
for
different.
Themselves or about me?
For themselves. It's going to be your story. So they're going to take something from your story, a moment in time, and then we're going to try to see what the epiphany was of that, of what you would like them to come away with, right? So could be really anything, but what would you hope for them to take away from your story at this current moment?
It might be too soon to answer that because these are big questions.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I'm willing to make an answer as if that's the answer, because you're stirring a pot. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But there, I'm writing this down.
And I'm just going to be taking notes, but just as we explore this and we talk about it, and sometimes people know what that is because they're right involved in the middle of it, right? Other times people want to kind of noodle and think about it for a time, and that's totally fine too. And then we just kind of have another quick meeting like this to once they feel like they have that understanding to kind of talk about it and see what stories we can share or what the epiphany bridge is, and then we set a time to do the actual episode. So and this is where I would say if the stuff that's most present in your mind is the stuff that is best, because this will change almost week from week what you would like them to.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like, and that's what I'm saying is like, some people will just like, oh yeah, I have it because it's the thing that's in my mind right now. And I feel like it's just, this is what's calling me. Right. And maybe it's something that's been calling for a long time. But yeah. And so a lot of times that's really what it is. And I do like to
I mean, the way I feel, Josh, is that if you imagine a door standing up on its own without a door frame, okay, but the door is open, so there's an imaginary frame, I suppose, and you've got numbers 1, 2, and 3. So hang on. So like that.
Mm-hmm.
So this is before you go through the door, or this is you going through the door. This is after you've gone through the door.
Right.
I'm here. I can't talk about this yet because I'm here. And it's too nebulous. And I know that, and I don't want to talk about it yet because I'm in it.
Right.
But I understand what you're saying.
So what led you to this moment of being right at this door?
I don't know why this makes me feel emotional. I would say love and loss.
Love and loss.
So I think I'm a bodhisattva character. You familiar, right?
No, explain it to me.
Oh, well, I think it's from the Buddhist tradition. I think it's Buddhist. The bodhisattva, do you know the story Jonathan Livingston Seagull about the bird?
Oh, it sounds very familiar. You started
So
telling me.
he died whilst flying. So he flew. All the other birds just flew back and forth to eat, to feed, and so on. They functioned as birds within their parameters. But then there was Jonathan Livingston Seagull, who practiced flying, who experimented with flying, who pushed beyond the bounds, who would have accidents trying new ways to fly and to expand beyond the limits of what everyone else was doing. And people were rather impatient with him because he wouldn't just get on with it being a regular seagull. And I guess it made things look more complicated than people liked. And I think, if I remember this rightly, one day he did have an accident, a serious accident, and either died or was in the process of dying. I forget which. And he had a choice. He had a choice to just go ahead and die, or he had a choice to come back and teach other people how to discover what he had discovered. That's a bodhisattva. He chose to come back. He chose to have another life,
Well, that
to
sounds like
share.
the story of Siddhartha. You're familiar with this
Okay,
one?
I don't know.
Siddhartha is Buddha, right?
Okay.
Before he became Buddha, right?
Yeah,
And
but
he,
Buddha didn't die. He
Buddha,
left his situation.
right?
But
It's
anyway, you
kind
get
of
the idea.
yeah, yeah. Huh. So
So I'm here exploring the edges of being both human and being both spiritual, like being something other than human, bigger than human, and yet being human, being in a human form. And there's a lot of loneliness in that, just like with Jonathan Livingston Seagull, because there's a sense of joy because you are thrilling yourself with sensation. So even going for a walk, I have a thrill from the wind, how the wind touches my skin, how it talks to me, how the sea and I talk to each other. So there's this deep connection to the elemental landscape that for me has actual meaning. It's not a metaphor, it's literal. And in that literal relationship, I transcend the mundane anticipations, but at the same time, I live in the mundane rituals of life, like paying rent or dealing with a conflict of understanding between myself and another. So there are these levels of operating and trying to find a sympathy between them, and at the same time exploring what only happens here because we're incarnate, which is the ability for me to be a physical artist, like to make music, to make art, to write. Like when I write, I'm also communing with this huge vastness that's so much more dramatic in a way. Not dramatic in a tornado kind of sense, but dramatic in the, oh my God, how do you get your head around the scale of life, like lifeness? So that's been my endeavor, I think, all my life. You know, when I was a really little girl, I used to spend all my time in the forest. And that was mesmerizing to me. And it was easy. Being a human has always been hard, much harder than being elemental in nature. Because the navigation of human systems, the complexity of contrast and conflict, of having skin, and not just being able to carry on flying through the air without limitation, right? Knowing that I am non-local and at the same time having to live as if I am local fucking does my head in, right? I still know myself as a non-local entity. And yet I reside in these walls and they don't move. Like I go out and I come back and they're in the same place. And it's like, Jesus, everything's still here where I left it, right? And there's something about that that to me is such an illusion. That's what does my head in. and here I am. Like, what exactly do I need to convey to feel like I'm fulfilling my life's purpose? And it's a weird thing to me. It's perplexing. It's perplexing. And I know that I look for clues. And I find them such irritating kinds of representations from other humans, online, like in Facebook, for instance, where all these ads pop up with people, sponsored ads, where people are selling their, if you will, epiphany bridge, but it feels like small scale, and it's always about getting more clients. And I don't know, I just look at that and it's like, that's not home for me. So I think I've been looking in other people's answers for my own. And I think that's a mistake for me. Because what happens is this comparison phenomena where I sort of think, well, why haven't I done that? Look at how successful they are. And at the same time, I'm still trying to fly and practice my arcs and my dips, because that's what's exciting to me. That's what has meaning. That's the playground. And there are so many grazes where I bump into things that I didn't know how to navigate, humans in particular, where I'll take people at face value, because there's a certain naivety, I think, that comes with having a really big heart and having that heart broken over and over by life.
So there was just in expressing that, and there was a lot there. So it wasn't just at that, right? It was many things. there was a few places that we could go just as an epiphany bridge, and we can say this isn't an epiphany. Well, now that we understand that this is an epiphany, how did my mind get there? And then we tell the story of how you got there. And that's really
Okay.
what we're trying to do, right? And as an entrepreneur, as a um, someone um, that is building something, someone that is creating something, someone that is wanting to create um, and bring to life a vision and find purpose within their work. There are people out there going through these same thoughts, right? And so what we're trying to do is, as they're going through these same thoughts, you're actually actively doing this. Maybe they're a little bit more passively doing this, and they're listening. And what we're trying to help them to do is go, hey, this sounds a little like me, right? And if what she's going through is any relation to what I'm going through, she's actively doing it, that means that I can actively do it. And so it helps them to take that step, right? To just,
I
even if
hear
it's just
you.
a small step. So
So, but here's the but. Let me give you my but. I don't know if I'm doing it well. I don't know if I'm doing it successfully. I still have rent to pay that I don't know how I'm going to pay next month. You know, so this navigation, that's why I say I'm before the door.
mhm.
From my perspective, I'd have to be in the doorway or on the other side of it to be able to offer anyone useful hope.
So just because you have rent to pay next month and you don't know how to pay it doesn't mean that you don't have real tangible understanding and things that you've created wins from, and knowledge that you're bringing to people, right? You're stuck
Okay.
you're stuck in where you're at in this moment, but in this, and you particularly, it sounds like the struggle of what that is. But there's always something that we're excelling at while we're also failing at something else, right? And for me, Claire, like when I talk to you, you can work through my problems much easier than you can work through your own, right? Your conversation before we even had this chat with me was very helpful and encouraging for me, and just to be able to be understood. I can honestly, that's what I felt, right? Is like, oh, do you know what? I don't feel like Shaheen and Carrie have really truly understood the challenges that I'm going through right now, and this come apart that my world is in and my family is in right now, and how much that is. But as soon as we got on the call, Claire, I was able to feel like I was understood in so many different ways. The only times that I really feel like I can get that is from my wife. Can't get it from my kids because they're just in their world right now, and I don't want to put anything onto them that would even significantly weigh them into a real world situation, like you have mentioned, just working with people, right? They're gonna have to get that in their own time and place, and they don't need it as they explore and learn. So it's really just Emily at this moment, and a lot of times Emily still has her own perspective, right? And is going through her own day, and I can try to understand hers, but I gain that sense of understand that you truly can get people. And if that's an epiphany in itself of like how you came to that, there can be that. I think just looking, the understanding of where you're at, and it could be a present one that you're working on, and you could say, you know what, I don't know how I get beyond this. Of this epiphany here is like really present, I think, for you. But looking in other people's answers for my own is a huge epiphany. Just knowing that, right?
Yeah.
And how
Yeah,
have
that's
you come
true.
to that, right?
Okay.
How have you come to that understanding? Because
I can talk about that.
yeah,
So the reason I know that's not the answer for me is because of how it feels.
Mhm.
Like when something belongs to me, it uplifts me. It makes me feel like I'm flying. It puts me back in the air.
Mhm.
And there's a sense of profound joy and rightness. And it doesn't even mean that the logistics have been sorted out at all. It's not even about that. There's a knowing that the logistics orient themselves around the right energy. So if I stop grabbing at other people's successes, whether they're real or not, because that's the other thing, they're often not even real. They're manufactured to make it look like
It's
something
only
people can
just one
trust.
little portion of the bigger picture, right? It's their success that they're having at this moment, but they're not sharing the failures that they're having in their life, right? Um, and so you're only seeing this one place. We all have all going
It's a
through,
tiny window.
yeah.
It's a tiny window, and they're saying, "Look at this," and there is this vastness around it where all the self-doubt, all the failing, all the false starts or redirects that have occurred aren't in the picture. But the worst of it is, and this is no different from spiritual teachings from people in the New Age movement, where I always see this kind of canyon, or if you were in the jungle or a forest, there's like a big creek that's just too wide to cross without a bridge.
Mhm.
And you're standing on one side of it, and then you got someone on the other side waving, coming out with all these like platitudes, really, around, oh, just do this, just do this, just do this, and it all sounds so nice and shiny and spiritual and so easy, but they
Mhm.
don't tell you how. They don't tell you how. And the language that is used only makes sense when you're in the space they are talking from. So there's this gap. There's this gap between what you're being told is possible and a bridge to get you there in a way that's human and not some weird miraculousness. Like there's so much more that is mundane and painful to growing and becoming than people will talk about. And so for me, there ended up being this feeling of failure. Like, oh, look at them. They they have the secret. Like it's always like there's a secret, and everyone's got this secret. And look, now they're making six figures, and that's all there is to it. You just know their secret, and then you jump into this world where you're earning six figures, and then everything becomes easy. That's the storyline.
Mhm.
And there's a gap in there. I think, you see, I'm still walking through the forest that I walked through as a child inside myself.
Mhm.
Like I'm still interacting with things and paying attention to the worms and the leaves and the sounds of the wind. Like there's something in me that doesn't care about six figures, even if I need it and would love the benefits of that. There's something in me that just doesn't relate to it. It doesn't make sense. It's a bit like this idea of borrowing other people's wins or successes. It's a bit like going into their cupboard and putting on their clothes, and they might not fit. They might not be my style, my colors. They might not be suitable for where I'm going. But there's this idea that I need to put them on because those are the clothes that will lead to identifiable successes, identifiable by a system that is already not in love with the universe. It's not in love with the planet. It's in love with its own success. It's Narcissus. And so there's something sort of double compounding about failing at a system that you don't actually want to be in existence anyway. So it's kind of like this weird bullshit. Because the system that enamors people turns us into magpies that constantly seek shiny things to steal is a false system. It's Maya. And it's not heart-based. So I think, the people that have inspired me, and I know I'm not going in a straight line with this conversation, but the people that have inspired me are the people that aren't telling me what the answers are exactly, but they're inhabiting a certain space. And those are people like Alan Watts. If I listen to his voice giving a lecture, I understand things. I feel at home. I find a home inside his voice, inside his perspective. And it's beyond logic. And it's not telling me what I should want to have exactly, like in order to be successful. I think the human issue is this idea of success. I think that's an illusion. And I think it's a very painful one, because the ways it's measured are super limited. They literally get measured by acquisition. And in sometimes by cruelty, because acquisition in this system is really about winning. And if you have winners, by definition, for that to exist, you have to have a loser or a number of losers. So what is extraordinary about us, that part of us that connects to the elemental, for instance, that can't play that game. And so the only way to win that game is to give up the elemental aspect of who we are and to pretend to agree to a lesser life that gets defined as a bigger life. Does that make sense?
It does. It's very what's the word that you use? The elemental. It's hard to grasp, right? In so many ways. It's essentially, in my understanding, it's the Tao. It's the way, right? You can't describe it. It is what it is.
Right. Yeah.
And that's essentially what you're telling me, right? And that's what we're kind of talking about.
Yes, and you know it because it knows you.
Yeah.
So it's not like the treasure you find under the mythological dragon, like the physical treasure. And by the way, the dragon represents creativity. And so the idea that Arthur was this fantastic kind of knight that slayed the dragon, all that really is saying is, if you want the treasure of money, you must kill your creative connection to the mythical and magical. And we're nothing without that. We are nothing. We're husks without mythology of life. And this is why Joseph Campbell was another mentor for me. I never met him, but he is definitely a mentor for me in his perspective. Because he, and another guy called Martin Shaw, who is living, he's a young guy who tells stories, but he does it in a way that transports you. Martin Shaw. He's English. And he lived in a yurt in the forest for 2 years. He left his life. This is something I know, in my experience at least, and I'm not saying this has to be the way it is for everybody, because I think that's dangerous. But I've had to leave behind over and over and over the things that I have identified as security. whether that's a way of seeing myself, a dream that I had for myself, a dream that I'm meant to want that others have for themselves. Living in a certain place, you know, I'm always having to give things up because it's the only way to stay current with what is for me. So, you know, I left the UK in my early 20s. I backpacked in my very early 20s around the world for over a year and experienced different cultures and watched what happens. And one of the takeaways I got from that was that there is suffering everywhere, and there is wealth everywhere, and there is poverty everywhere, and there is community quite often where there is poverty. And those communities tended to be the communities that worked, you know, that had something. They tended to be in the countryside. But in the cities, you had the disparity, and it was in every city. Every city had skyscrapers and paupers, you know, begging on the streets. Like the gap between the haves and have-nots of the material world was always more pronounced, and everything was dirtier in and faster and less interpersonal, you know, in the cities. And then you go to the countryside, and the influence of the mountains and the spaciousness and the different pace meant that the values were different. The need seeking, like seeking to meet your needs, was different. It's a different journey in the countryside. And that was, in a way, so that's Buddha, that story, in the sense that he left his kingdom. He left his kingdom and then explored the town. And he's like, hang on a minute, right? And then he goes and sits under a tree. He goes to the countryside and just hangs out there until things become more evident. That's a really hard thing to do. It's really hard because there's a pressure in our culture, the westernized culture, that's all about speed and pace. Hurry up, hurry up, hurry up. I don't know myself in the same way if I'm hurrying up. I don't get to hear the wisdom of a different kind of guidance if I'm hurrying up. But I'm an impatient person by nature too, because everything is non-local and everything therefore is instantaneous. I remember how that is to be existing like that. So it's dynamic tension between instantaneous manifestation and then having to make things work physically in the physical world, making relationships, getting jobs, going to work for a whole day, then you get this paycheck, right? So there's a lot of different stories that can be quite opposite to each other about how to become successful. And they're confusing. And I think in all of those stories, what gets lost or left behind is that personal awareness of who you are. Like what touches you? What feels worthwhile? What is that thing that lifts you rather than pushes you? Like that pulls you towards it rather than imposes itself on you. I just got to get my power cord.
No worries. So Claire, there is so much to unpack here.
I know. I can tell you one thing that's simple. Letting go of things, letting go of people, letting go of things that didn't work. I wrote something on my wall. I have a big wall that I write on there. And I wrote one day recently, letting go of dreams is much harder than letting go of reality. So from an entrepreneurial perspective, you know, if we have a vision for what we think could work, it can be really dangerous, because I have gotten attached to ideas that have been offered to me. And because of certain qualities, and this has happened over time, this is not one-off moments, but one of the things I've learned, because it happens, it just happens and happens, is that someone will present to me something and it'll be shiny and I'll turn into the magpie. And, you know, it's like, oh, do this, let's do this, I'll help you. And I believe them. And I think they mean it, which is why I choose to believe them. And I jump in both feet, fully invested emotionally and with my time and attention and my commitment. And then over time, something in the relationship wanes. Maybe the idea doesn't manifest in the way that, like, maybe both people's vision was actually quite different. So I think something that I hope, you know, that I know I bumped into and that's caused me pain, but it's also given me learning experiences, right? You can't avoid pain. But when I finally realized, even with hints, that there is something wrong with what is happening, if I'm attached to my vision more than I'm attached to reality, I will ignore the reality of the failings that are occurring and the train that's coming down the tracks, because I'm trying to hold on to the vision. So there's something about being willing to just keep letting go, not necessarily of the end point, right? So maybe your vision is world peace, not letting go of that, but letting go of things that are telling you they don't work anymore, because those actually take you off track. And there's a correlation that happens where we merge the idea of something that's in front of us as being the only way to that vision. And that if we let go of it, we're saying no to our vision. And we cause ourselves immense suffering, because it basically being stubborn, like not listening to feedback from the environment that is suggesting there were some good things here, but maybe we need to do that. So the other part of that is also being the driver of the train, right? So sometimes I'll meet someone and I think, oh, here, take the wheel. And I've done that recently, and I gave someone the wheel to my train. And then I realized, oh my God, they don't know how to fucking drive. They know how to fly a plane, but they've never done a train. What am I doing? Letting that person be in charge of my train, my life, my vision. There's something about acquiescing, not using our own wisdom and knowledge, our own intuitive power, right, as well as facts and logic, and assuming that because someone isn't us, that somehow they know more than we do about what's right. So going against my own sense of knowledge, just because I think the other person must know what they're talking about. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I'm trying to distill it as much as I can into a statement that could be an epiphany, right? And then that can help us to,
You know more than you think. I would say that you know more than you think.
or what I was coming up with right here is like, and I'll put that down real quick too. But what you're saying about, you know, not letting go of the vision can, it can in many ways ruin the dream, right?
Well, ruin your chances of getting there as a whole happy whole person.
Ruin the realization.
Because you matter too. That's the thing. Here's something. Josh, you matter too.
Mm-hmm.
So the vision is not more important than you.
Mm-hmm.
That to me is really important. I've sacrificed myself many times for a vision. I've sacrificed my relationship to my what I really know that I'm ignoring, or to my safety, or to this, that, or the other.
Well, so, and I could take this into my own life, but I think this might be our epiphany here, right? Of like being able to let go of something as an entrepreneur, and
Yeah.
not to like, if someone says your baby is ugly, to be able okay and say, okay, my baby's ugly, or in the sense of like your idea,
Or just not to me.
or
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, or to be able to let go of certain pieces of that vision in order to create to be able to find something that's better than what you even had ever thought of, right? And so this idea of not letting go of something can in many ways ruin the realization of a dream or realization of your best self, or
It
your
can.
truest
I mean,
potential,
yeah. There's
right?
ways you need to relate to it to find out what's the issue here. Is it uh, do I need to adapt, or is this just a bad fit? And I
Mm-hmm.
think being able to do that is an important skill.
Yeah, and so it's that skill or understanding of letting go is a huge piece, especially for entrepreneurs. I think when we get so set in our ways, well, in so many ways, this is, I could say I've had ideas that I've held so greedily onto, of like, oh, this is it. This is the main thing, especially early in my entrepreneurial uh, devices of like, this is going to be the next big thing. But I didn't share it with anybody. I held on to it, right? I wasn't willing to like let it get out into the world and kind of give it some of its own breathing room and tell people about it. That's like one way of not being able to let go. Another way of not being able to let go is like Emily and I, when we lived in Montana, it was actually Emily's, she wanted to create an off-grid homestead, right? And
Oh,
we wanted to
what?
buy an off-grid homestead, right?
Okay.
And so we went
Yeah.
to Montana to do that. We bought land and we were living off grid, and it was hard work. And
Yeah.
at some point, it was dragging our marriage down, right?
Right.
Emily was pregnant, and I was like, no, we're not moving away from this. This was your idea. Let's keep on doing this, right? And I would
Right.
hold that against her, like, you wanted this dream. Let's keep on doing this, right? And
Right.
once we get to a certain point, our kids are a little older, or we stop deciding to have kids, we'll be able to work through some of these things, or we'll be able to weather this storm. And there was always something, but it was ruining our relationship to the point that there wouldn't be a relationship at the very end of it, that we would ruin a marriage because of a vision, because of something that we had done.
Yeah.
And so me being able to let go there, right? And so I think what you're saying is very poignant, of like being able to understand that letting go of something in many ways can help us to obtain our goals. So that's like the other way of saying it, right? And then not letting go of something can ruin our ability to achieve it, right? Um,
Well, it's worse than that though, Josh, because I think for me, the epiphany, and you're welcome to have the epiphany that you have from this, but for
mhm.
me, the epiphany is don't put the vision ahead of your commitment and connection to self.
Okay.
Because if you, like you're talking about there, if we stay stubborn around a vision, we can lose the things that are right in front of us, like our family, our partner, our health, our joy.
So say that one more time. It sounds like you wrote it down.
Do not put the vision ahead of your connection and commitment to self, because the vision is not more important. It can't be. You cannot sacrifice yourself for your vision. You have to use, you have to navigate who you actually are in each moment. in order to move towards the vision in a way that is both full and healthy. And your own sense of peacefulness is a reflection, actually, of how the vision, what flavor the vision will have. So
Right.
if you maintain choices that keep you happy, then that will feed into the vision. If the vision is a cooking pot, how you approach the vision are the ingredients you put in it. And if you're really slavish to yourself, like, work harder, don't go to bed, have 3 hours sleep, and all those sorts of things, don't have fun, don't go for a walk, work, like, that's hard, that's horrible. And that's going to be in the vision. So therefore, you're really creating a vision is really only a replica of ourselves.
I like that. So don't put the vision ahead of your connection and what was the
Commitment to self.
Commitment to self. Okay. So if we say that's our epiphany bridge statement, and I do have to hop off here in the next little bit, but let's have we'll have a smaller conversation of, but I want you to just be thinking of, and don't over script it, because then it's really just not something that's really coming from your heart, right? It's just, but just think of instances and times in your life. And I would just say, you don't have to write down the full story. Just write down the sentence that describes what the story is.
Sure.
Right. And just write how you have come to this understanding of not putting yourself, not putting your vision ahead of your connection and commitment to self. Right. And that will be our podcast episode. We'll spend an hour talking about that. Does that sound good?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Do you use Podbean, by the way? What podcast do you use?
So my hosting is done through Libsyn.
Say it again.
Libsyn. So Liberated Syndication is what is the full name, but they go by Libsyn. Libsyn. And their website is libsyn.com. I can.
Got it.
Oh, you got it.
And why did you choose them?
They are like number 1 or number 2 in hosting. And I've heard of Podbean. Podbean is like an intermediary then you of hosting, and then you kind of actually put it into your own hosting. You pretty much own your media with Libsyn, right? So where Podbean, it gets put into their things, they manage it and those types of things, right? So at least that's what I can't actually say what Podbean does because I'm probably thinking of someone else at this point. It's been a while, but I've enjoyed Libsyn. It's one of the best hosting. I can have that up as long as I want. They don't cost a lot. I can gradually scale with it as my podcast scales, which I have done, right? I started off only paying like $5 a month, and now I'm paying like, I think 15 or 20 a month to host my stuff, right? And then that goes out to everywhere. And Spotify, it's on iTunes, it's on all the different channels. And I just
they do that automatically.
So you have to set it up to for iTunes and Spotify might go automatically, but even still, I like to do the things manually. So you have that connection and handshake with the actual service. So anytime I find a new platform that's being used by others, I just add my my hosting server to their platform, and then it blasts out and it stays that connection stays, right? As long as my my hosting is being paid for, it goes out to all the different places that it's being syndicated to, right? And so that's why I like Libsyn, because I can be on every platform and I still own the media. I can put that media wherever I want, right? Whereas if you do some of these other ones, I'm not sure if it's Podbean, but there's other ones that are like, they basically will, what's it, SoundCloud, right? SoundCloud, you put it on their platform and it stays on their platform. It's hard to put it on other people's platforms unless you're,
I think I understand. Yeah.
yeah.
By the way, do get the book because your children will love it. It's a children's book, Jonathan Livingston Seagull.
I think,
You have
yeah,
to read it. It's like it's a very quick read. It's a short children's
it's a
book.
classic, isn't it?
Classic, total classic.
I think we might even have it. I think because my wife is like a big classics collector, and we homeschool,
Yeah.
and so it's just that's like the thing that we do. I wrote it down.
Yeah, and I put it in the chat for you.
Yeah, thank you.
As well.
Yeah, it sounds like a the story of Siddhartha in a lot of ways, and in a lot of ways, I look at Siddhartha letting go of this life, and almost it's not a suicide per se, but it's like he only ate a grain of rice, right, and then sat there meditating, and then basically was like translated into the next world, but he basically just passed on in a lot of ways, right, and then was like, oh, was given the choice of like, you can come back and teach the things that you've now learned, right? I kind of see
it. So it's called Letting. Is it a book?
Siddhartha?
Letting Go.
Letting Go. No.
Well, so it's a philosophy. It's not a specific book.
The story of Siddhartha is the story of Buddha, and it's his,
okay.
Yeah, that's his. So it's told by many different interpretations in many different religions, but yeah, it's a philosophy. It's well,
Hermann Hesse is one.
Yeah, and it's retold in so many different ways. Yeah, the story of Siddhartha is, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I studied it when I studied my degree in consciousness studies, but I'd forgotten about it, the name, at least.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I know you said you have to go.
Yeah, I have another call here in a little bit, so I'm going to prep for that one. For us, let's set the date for our podcast. We'll have that be our well, no, actually, let's not set the date. Let's set a small time for us just to talk about the stories that you've kind of come up with, like next week. Does that sound good?
Okay.
Yeah. We only need about 15-30 minutes. You can say, here's some of the stories, and maybe tell me some of that understanding, so I can then just be prepared. I don't need to know everything. In fact, me not knowing everything is actually a better thing, because then I can be more curious. Yeah, then I can be more curious and just talk to you and ask questions about the story, right?
Are we on the same time zone? Not, I'm 9:17 a.m. right now.
I'm 11:17 now.
Okay, so you're 2 hours ahead. Mm-hmm. So what about Tuesday at 9 a.m. my time, or 10 a.m. or 9:30 my time? So add 2 hours.
Tuesday the 19th at you said 11?
9:30? Yeah, that's 9 in my time is 11 your time.
Yeah. So 11:30. Yeah, that'll work good.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll just send you an invite here. We won't need more than 30 minutes, and we'll just be thinking of, you wrote it down, your epiphany statement. I have it here, and I can even just send you these notes here. Let me do that real quick that I took.
Okay.
They're all over the place, and they're just kind of stream of consciousness of what you were talking about, but it might help you just to remember.
Will you send me the recording as well?
I can. It might take a little bit for me to get that to you, because it'll take. Actually, got to see if my internet connection is not the best, and it hasn't been fully doing what I need to for the recordings. So I have to talk to Shaheen and Carrie and see if we can get, because they have fiber. We just have to pull it to this location. But we're gonna have to do that something quick if I don't have enough bandwidth to work or run our homeschool here, right?
Right.
Because we are remote, but we're not so remote that we can't get that type of communication um, in our lives. Let's see here. Share the web. Let's see. Copy. Okay, here you go. There's the notes from today, and then the very last sentence that I put down here is the actual epiphany. I can kind of highlight that too. I love how we came to this one too. Sometimes people have it straight on their head. Sometimes it takes us weeks to kind of come up with this, and then a lot of times when that happens, it's like overthought at that point, you know. But this one was just like we were stream of conscious pretty much the entire time, and so it's just like landing in it, and it was very creative, and I love it, and it's totally typical of how I've come to know you. So thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. All right. I will see you next week. I will send this invite to you right now. Invite. Let's see. Copy invite link. You feel? I know this was a heavy conversation. Has it lightened you a little bit? That sigh. What was that
That
sigh?
surprised me. I hadn't really anticipated. Yeah.
Okay. That's
No,
good.
I feel quite. I'm actually feeling quite appreciative.
Great. Wonderful.
So thank you.
I'm glad. I'm glad this has had that effect on you.
Yes. It was
Awesome.
touch and go for a minute.
Claire. I'll just call it Claire.
So being
Epiphany.
honest, that's part of it. I'm taking notes now. It's about being honest with ourselves and with each other.
I love that. Okay.
That's really key.
Okay, so this is sent to you. And then I'm going to add that note as well, just under this epiphany being this with ourselves. Okay. Oh, thank you for taking the time and putting your soul into this and being vulnerable. It works out so much better when we can actually share these things with others and be vulnerable, and we all grow together from that. So thank you for doing that.
Well, and I just want to point out that it was possible in combination with you. So that ability and need to suddenly go there was because you make it possible.
Well, thank you.
You don't shut the door on it.
I'm glad. I do try, and it is conscious on my part. So thank you so much.
Thank you too.
Okay. Talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye.